Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles, the Friday podcast all about your Kindle. I'm Len Edgerly. Today is November 17th, 2017. Greetings from Cambridge, Massachusetts, where this week I caught up via Skype and telephone with the leader of the Amazon team that created the Kindle that made its historic debut on November 19th, 10 years ago. He is Senior Vice President Steve Kessel from the Boston area himself, and he now heads Amazon's physical stores operation. I think you're going to enjoy hearing how he recalls the genesis of the first Kindle and what he considers its essential attributes a decade later.
We talked a lot in those early days about decisions of the things for it to not do were as important as the decisions of what it should do.
First up in news, I want to tell you about my experience with Amazon Key. That's the new service that enables you to permit Amazon deliveries to be placed inside your home with the help of the watchful eye of a camera that you can monitor from your smartphone. This service went live last week on November 8th in 37 cities, including Boston and Denver. My wife Darlene was skeptical about replacing the lock on our new home here in Cambridge with something that would let strangers into the house, but I explained that it was part of my responsibility to track new Amazon technology for listeners. She's heard that before, and she gave me a pass to at least try it out. I ordered a quick set smart code keypad that was one of 3 brands available for Amazon Key and an Amazon Cloud Cam. The total cost was $297.49, and I opted for the free setup. There was a charge for it, but they credited you for the setup fee if you ordered the package. A technician arrived 2 days ago from the Dish satellite TV business per an appointment that I set up after ordering the equipment. His name was Joel. He was very professional, and within about an hour and a half, he had replaced the deadbolt on our front door with the quick set, and he had installed the camera high on a wall where it had a good view of the door from inside the house. The keypad has a physical buttons on it so that you can open and lock the deadbolt without using the Amazon Key app. You just use a physical move of the deadbolt mechanism. With the app, I'm able to lock and unlock the door with my iPhone. That'll be from anywhere, including when we're back in Denver. I tried to set up an order on Amazon to test the delivery option, but there is an apparent 3 to 5 day lead time for home deliveries using the Amazon Key system as opposed to just regular Prime deliveries. I ordered a pair of biking gloves that will arrive next week. As I understand it, the Amazon delivery person will notify me when he or she is unlocking the door to leave the package, and I will be able to watch live via the camera to make sure that's all the person does in my house. Wired had kind of a scary story yesterday, November 17th, announcing that security researchers had discovered a flaw that would enable them to bypass Cloud Cam's monitoring of the door. The story reported that a simple program run from any computer within Wi-Fi range can disable a camera and freeze it, hiding the re-entry of a rogue delivery person bent on mischief. Contacted by Wired, Amazon responded that it planned to deploy an update later this week, which would be here today or tomorrow, I suppose. The update will more quickly provide notifications if the camera goes offline during a delivery. Amazon also said it does not allow any staffer to unlock a door without being authorized to deliver a package at a certain address at a certain time, even if the camera is disabled. The company also said it would be able to immediately identify any driver that used the trick to break into someone's house. I'm glad someone found this vulnerability and that Wired reported it and that Amazon is patching it. I no doubt have a higher than average level of trust for Amazon's reliability, and I am very curious to see how this service will work. At our old house here in Cambridge, there was a closed entryway where packages could be left out of sight, but here there's just a covered front stoop so packages are easily seen from the street. Balancing the risk of someone snagging an unattended Amazon box from the street versus the risk of a rogue delivery person hacking my camera from a laptop in his truck, well, I'll stick with Amazon Key until my actual experience sours me on it. I also like the ability to allow other people into the house remotely using this system. We will be doing a remodel project here early next year, so it could be handy to enable various workmen working on the construction to get in the door remotely. We have a key and a lockbox by the door with a code that our contractor has, but I think I'm going to feel a little more intimately connected to the coming and going of the crew if I use Amazon Key. And it also seems that I'm going to be able to talk through the camera from my iPhone, so if there's a need to communicate with someone coming from the door, they're going to hear me coming from the audio of the camera. Free in-home standard shipping doesn't cost anything if you're a Prime member, but at least today when I ordered those bike gloves, it was not available with free 2-day delivery. The delivery date quoted was 3 to 5 business days or sometime next week. I tried to order an item with Prime Now, which in Boston enables me to receive same-day deliveries, but on those items I did not see an in-home delivery option listed at checkout, so I couldn't try it out today in time to tell you about it. I did see on the checkout information for the biking gloves a statement that, quote, you can block access for in-home delivery in the Amazon Key app. This must mean that even though I set up a delivery of the gloves for in-home delivery next week, I could change my mind and I could block the door from being unlocked, and in that case, the package will be left as usual on the outside of the door. The Amazon Key app on my iPhone, which the dish technician helped me to set up with the camera and lock, provides notifications every time the door is unlocked or locked, and there's a log going back in time. One aspect of the service that we will have to be mindful of is the recommendation that pets not have access to the door where deliveries will be made. Our 5-pound Yorkie Claire is very protective of any house that she inhabits for more than about 5 minutes, so we're going to have to make sure that she's isolated in the bedroom if we are in town, but away from the house during a delivery. Otherwise, I suppose I could speak sternly to her from the high camera, directing her to leave the poor delivery person alone and not eat the package. I'm sure she wouldn't obey a command like that, but the source coming from overhead might be enough to confuse her long enough so that the driver could slip out the door unscathed. So that's Amazon Key. I will let you know when we learn about it as time goes on. I'm looking forward to that first delivery that I'll be able to watch on my iPhone, probably from the back bedroom as it happens. Next in news is an item that was forwarded to me by listener Dan Campbell. It appeared in GeekWire under the headline, Rekindling Amazon's Old Flame. 10 years later, we can get the original Kindle e-reader to work again, by Todd Bishop. The piece includes a Newsweek cover of Jeff Bezos holding an original Kindle with the story written by the great tech writer Stephen Levy. Bishop called the Kindle One a bulky white beast. That's a pretty fair description of that debut model that was priced at $399 and sold out within 5.5 hours of its introduction on November 19th, 2007. Bishop also points out that only 17,000 people worked at Amazon at the time of the Kindle's debut. You're going to hear from one of them in the interview. The workforce now stands at more than 540,000 people. Bishop's original Kindle, which he purchased on eBay, did not work until he called Amazon Tech Support and was advised to update its firmware using a USB cable and computer. Now it's working fine, and the author was able to read books purchased in 2017 on a device that came out a decade earlier. Impressive. My original Kindle is in its original box. It's safely in our storage cage at the basement of our high-rise in Denver. I knew I was going to want to keep that one for a very long time. This next story is somewhat related. As you may recall, Amazon launched its self-publishing platform, Kindle Direct Publishing, on the same day as the first Kindle. A decade later, it has grown to be a major new force in book publishing, and that has attracted no end of scammers and tricksters gaming the ranking system of Kindle reviews for nefarious purposes. You can get a feel for the challenge of policing the KDP neighborhood if you read a post by David Gogram last month titled Amazon's Hall of Spinning Knives. I've had David on the show, and I consider him to be a pretty fair analyst of the ebook space, but he weighed in hard on Amazon's targeting of an indie author named Phoenix Sullivan for what the company detected as purchases of her book originating from accounts attempting to manipulate sales rank. This led to what's known as rank stripping of the book, and Phoenix had a difficult time reaching anyone at Amazon to restore her account. David's post has generated more than 242 responses, nearly all of them angry at Amazon for the treatment of this particular author. David's replies, which are interspersed with his readers' comments, generally pushed back on the more conspiratorial suggestions, such as that the reason Amazon was doing this was it wanted to undermine book promotion sites like BookBub. He did end up speaking with someone in executive customer relations and then with someone a little bit more senior. When I emailed Amazon about the matter, they sent me the following comment. Amazon monitors a variety of activities to detect efforts to manipulate sales rankings. While we don't disclose the methods we use to detect this type of abuse, our focus is on suspicious activity, not on any particular promotional service that publishers may use. As always, publishers are responsible for any activities third-party marketing services employ to promote their books, and so are strongly encouraged to make sure that the activities of the service providers they choose do not manipulate our services. If a publisher believes there has been an error, they should contact us directly and we will investigate. I followed up by asking exactly how should an author contact Amazon directly if they feel they've been subject to an unfair response in this effort to detect scammers. It turns out it's pretty simple. There's a Contact Us link on your KDP account page, and you can also send an email to CRM, as in Mary, -SRA-compliance at Amazon.com, and that will prompt an investigation of your case. I'm very sympathetic to the plight of a legitimate indie author getting caught in Amazon's perhaps algorithmic patrol of its ebook market space, but I also have to say I feel grateful as a reader that they are putting serious effort into maintaining the reliability of customer reviews and rankings. These are problems that would have been difficult to imagine when the Kindle was introduced a decade ago. Another item that I spotted in news this week reminded me that although Amazon is often described as a 100-pound gorilla cutting a wide swath through the U.S. economy, the Seattle retailer is a lot smaller than another online powerhouse, Alibaba in China. Alibaba, like Amazon's Prime Day in July, made up a one-day sales event named Singles Day, celebrated last week on November 11th. While Prime Day sales topped $1 billion, that's an estimate, in 24 hours, Alibaba's one-day sale raked in that much, $1 billion, in the first 2 minutes of the sale. It took Amazon 30 hours to generate about $1 billion, according to analysts that were cited in a Bloomberg post last July. Alibaba's total for its 24-hour sale, 6 hours less, was $25.3 billion. Singles Day, by the way, began as a protest of sorts against Valentine's Day. The date of the sale, November 11th, is written 11/11 and is associated with unattached singles known as bear sticks in China. That's according to a story in the New York Times. Another big sales day here in the U.S., Black Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving next week, is, of course, sparking notable specials from Amazon and other retailers. I am going to be looking for a good-sized Fire TV-enabled television, maybe 40, 43 inches, something like that. I don't want to spend too much money. And based with my good experience with Joel, I will opt for installation by someone from Dish. He said that Dish is handling the Amazon TV installations here in the Boston area. If you'd like to take a trip in the Wayback Machine, the last item in news, even further back than the introduction of the Kindle 10 years ago, I will have a link in the show notes to an interview Jeff Bezos gave to someone named Richard Wiggins in June of 1997. It's on YouTube. Someone's got a video camera on him in the background. There's a lawn, but there's a lot of people walking by. It's a very sort of amateur setting, and he's got a lot more hair than he has now, and he's talking about a number of things which I've heard before, but this one struck me because I think it's notable that when you hear Jeff Bezos talk from years ago, decades ago, you're going to hear some consistency in his insights. I'm sure you will immediately recognize this one.
What's really incredible about this is that this is day one. This is the very beginning. This is the Kitty Hawk stage of electronic commerce. We're moving forward in so many different areas, and lots of different companies are as well. And the late 20th century is just a great time to be alive. We're going to find out that I think a millennia from now, people are going to look back and say, wow, the late 20th century was really a great time to be alive on this planet.
I've got some tech tips to pass along. The first is something I noticed just the other night when I saw a question posted on my video review of the new Kindle Oasis. If you were asked if the screen of the new Oasis looks any different from the old one, since I have both generations of the Oasis on my bedside table, I was able to compare them next to each other in the dark. And to my eye, and impressions of e-ink screens are notoriously subjective, the new Oasis has a very slight sepia hue compared with the previous generation, which just seems more white and black. I've always set my Kindle apps to sepia on my iPhone and Fire devices, so I find the sepia look is very pleasing. And if I had to choose one over the other, that's what I would go for. In general, as an update, I have made my peace with the heavier weight of the new Oasis, and I do prefer it to the smaller screen 8th generation model. One reason is that when I use page flip, that's a view where you see 9 pages all on one screen. You can kind of orient yourself in the book. Those thumbnails are slightly larger on a 7-inch screen than they were on the original 6-inch screen. I like the Amazon leather case that I bought for the new Oasis, but I always remove it when I read in bed, leaving the case on the table. Then it snaps together very nicely with the magnetic clasp when I'm done. So without the cover, the new Oasis is still very light for reading. Except for the dunking I did at Ocean Park, I have not had any reason to avail myself of the waterproof capability of the Oasis, and I'm not likely to use the Bluetooth connection for Audible. But I do like the size of it, and I will be glad to retire the 8th generation for my e-ink reading. I've got a tip for watching video on Echo Show if you have one. My parents, who are 88 and 90, are huge fans of the Fawlty Towers series a while back starring John Cleese. So I logged into their Amazon account for them and purchased both seasons. They only cost $11 each. Now they can watch Fawlty, Manuel, and the rest of the zany cast of the hotel on their show at the kitchen table. I did run into a glitch when I gave the command as Watch Fawlty Towers after purchasing Season 1 on my own account. For some reason, it brought up Season 1, Episode 3. I couldn't find any way to tap the screen and navigate to a different episode. Alexa Tech Support had a quick answer to the question, which I will demonstrate for you here. Alexa, play Fawlty Towers, Season 1, Episode 2.
Here's Fawlty Towers, Season 1, Episode 2.
Yes, you know, Abita. A vanity bumble. Oh, buzz.
Polly, I have asked you, please, not to leave your strange drawings lying around the place. I mean, I'm sorry, what is this supposed to be?
Oh, it's just a scam. I mean, what is it?
Etc. This would be a good time to get behind the 8 ball and watch a little bit, but the show must go on. Finally, in tech tips, I purchased a Garmin Speak. That's an Alexa-enabled device for the car after hearing about it from listener James Wellman. I was interested to see what an Alexa device in a car might do, so I spent $150 of the Kindle Chronicles tech research budget to buy one. It took quite a while to set it up with the Garmin Speak app on my iPhone. I sat out in the driveway for an hour one night this week trying different sequences to get the attractive round device paired with my car and my Amazon account. When it finally worked, I could talk to Alexa the way I do on all my other devices in the home. But as I was playing around with it, I wondered how useful this would really be for me in the car, where I would almost always be using my data plan coverage instead of Wi-Fi, and that could get a little expensive or use up my data. For example, I could bring up an Audible book with Garmin Speak, but it would be streaming over the internet, again going against my cell's provider's data plan. A much better option for listening to audiobooks in the car, it seems to me, to download one to the iPhone and then just listen to it on the car speakers paired by Bluetooth. I also found the navigation ability of the Garmin to be surprisingly flawed. I couldn't get it to recognize my sister's address in Concord, Massachusetts, and an address which the built-in navigation in our Ford Focus easily found, as did maps on my iPhone 10. The Speak has a nice tiny round display that is circled by a familiar blue light, looks like the top of an Echo or a Dot when Alexa is listening. It came with a really long connecting cable. I think that the idea was you might be able to squeeze it between your windshield and the rubber casing, but that seemed sort of awkward to me. And then when I tried to use just a small micro USB cable, I found that I couldn't plug it into the Garmin. It has some kind of a proprietary port, so that wasn't very convenient. I think this is a laudable bit of innovation on Garmin's part, and if you don't have built-in navigation in your car, you might find it useful, though I still think navigation on your smartphone would probably be better. Also, because Garmin's maps live on the Speak as an Alexa skill, you have to say, Alexa, ask Garmin for directions too. So it gets kind of tedious. You don't just sort of say, Alexa, ask for directions. You have to say, Alexa, ask Garmin for directions, because it's a Garmin skill. You can also say, Alexa, ask Garmin, are we there yet? And that's one that they use in an ad for the device. It's pretty cute. I will probably return the Garmin Speak for a refund from Amazon. I'll pay for the return shipping. But I think what I'd like to do is, if any of you would be interested in having this device, I would be willing to sell it for $50 as sort of a perk for listening. Just send me an email at podchronicles@gmail.com, and I will box it up and ship it to you. The first email I receive will be the winner. So if you're interested, hit pause and send me an email. Say that you'd like the Garmin Speak. Good luck. Time now for the interview. Steve Kessel joined Amazon in 1999 and has served as Vice President U.S. for Books, Music, Video, and DVD, as well as Senior Vice President for Worldwide Digital Media. He is now listed as simply Senior Vice President. He received his bachelor's degree in computer science from Dartmouth and his MBA from Stanford. I connected with Steve by Skype and phone on Tuesday, November 14th, in order to hear his recollections of the creation of the first Kindle 10 years ago. He headed the team that designed and launched the first Kindle. Steve took a year-long sabbatical from Amazon. After his return to the company, a GeekWire story in 2015 said he was working on a, quote, super secret project. We now know that that project probably had something to do with Amazon's entry into brick-and-mortar stores, because he is now responsible for all of the physical store's operation. I began our conversation by asking what Steve's earliest memory is of the creation of the Kindle.
The earliest memories are probably about building the team. Meeting with Greg Zaire, who was, really the first hire to lead the hardware development of Kindle. And I'm forever grateful, of course, to Greg for taking the leap of faith and deciding to join us. I remember meeting with Greg to hire our first supply chain person. I remember meeting with Narcy, who we hired to work on wireless. And each of these, early folks, I think, were visionary in their own way, or insightful enough to believe that Amazon could be successful in building an e-reader, even though it wasn't something that we had done previously.
And the launch was November 19th of 2007. Were these first hires like 3 years before that, or how long was the runway before it actually surfaced?
Yeah, that runway was a little longer than we had initially planned. Greg and I actually told Jeff at the beginning that we thought we could get it built in about 18 months with a handful of people. Huh. And at the end of the day, we were off by probably an order of magnitude on people. And as you mentioned, it took us about 3.5 years. And there's a couple reasons why. It was as I mentioned, it was the first time we were building a device, so we had a lot to learn. And after that, the team and as a company, we got better each time. So our second Kindle was developed more quickly, and now, as you know, that team is launching Kindles and Fire TVs and Fire tablets and Echoes and more every year. But second, we also held a high bar for the customer experience for that first one. And so, for example, we insisted on having, I think it was at the time, 90 of the top 100 New York Times bestsellers available. And so we had to work with publishers to make sure that we could do that successfully. We actually spent time literally timing how long it was taking for books to download. And then we worked with the carrier to make improvements there, because we had a set of what we called minimum standards before we launched. So ultimately, it took us longer than the 18 months than we initially said, but we got there.
Now, at that time, Was Lab 126 in existence, or did it sort of grow out of that core of people that were working on this first device?
That was the name we gave to that first hardware and device side software team that we were building down in the Bay Area.
I see. It must have been challenging, I would think, although there were a couple of e-readers at that time, but to build back from customers, how could you do that when most customers had never even maybe thought of an e-reader? How did you gather feedback that would link what you were doing to the kind of customer satisfaction that you certainly hoped for?
At Amazon, we talk about two types of invention. We talk about listening to customers for feedback, and there are always things that you can be doing there. So if things aren't arriving when you said they were going to arrive in the retail business, you always want to be listening to their feedback. But we also talk about inventing sometimes on behalf of customers. When you're imagining things that don't exist, it's hard for customers to ask for those things. And so I think Kindle was an example of inventing on their behalf. In the way we do that now, we have a name for that process, and we call it the working backwards process, which you might have heard about before, which is the first thing that we do is we write the press release. And we keep iterating on that press release until we believe it's an experience that is the right one for customers. And it can be frustrating for the team at first because they want to get going and they want to get working and they want to get building. But what we've learned is it's actually faster when you take the time at the beginning to decide what you want to do rather than changing your mind along the way. And so in those early points when we were iterating on the press release, that's, for example, when we decided we wanted the device to be wireless. And so if you remember, if you think back to that time, portable devices that we had, you would sync them to your computer to get the content across on it, which made sense because in those days files were large for music or for video. But text was small enough at that point to be able to be delivered wirelessly. And we knew that book lovers weren't necessarily gadget lovers. And so we said, well, let's make it wireless for them. And we said, well, if we're going to make it wireless, we're going to need to find a way to have it have no annual contract or no monthly fee. And so we kept iterating on that press release until when we looked at it, we said, this is something that we think, customers will love if we try to invent it.
Interesting. So the first version of that press release might not have even had the wireless capability. It was just a way to read books digitally. Yeah,
that's right. Often in the press release process, you're iterating on that experience until it is something that as I said, you believe is the right customer experience.
Yeah.
And the wireless was one big part of that. And as we said, and also then setting that wireless up in a way that was different. Everything up until that point, customers needed to have a monthly contract or an annual fee. But we said, we knew we wanted to have their first experience with a Kindle be magical. At the end of the day, the physical book was and is a great invention. And so we needed to make sure that the Kindle could be doing things that a physical book couldn't do.
Right. I've seen some icons of Amazon's history around the campus, and I'm wondering, did anybody save that first version of the Kindle press release that you can put under glass somewhere in the building?
I haven't seen a first version of the press release. It would be interesting to see. My guess is it's, the one we ended with was pretty similar to, the Ultimate experience that we launched with, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, interesting. I was thinking back to that early period before 2007 or right around that time, that if someone had been able to time travel and show you the new Kindle Oasis 9th generation, what do you think would have surprised you most about what was going to be happening in the ensuing decade?
That's interesting. I'm not sure what I'd be surprised by, but what I would say is that I think the latest Kindle is a very good reminder of, at Amazon, what we call programmatic focus. And so we talk about making sure we treat things like programs, not projects. And so you have resources on those ongoing, every day, every week, every month. And that allows you to make continual progress on things that take years. And so what I would say is the latest Kindle is a great example of that. You see the crispness of the screen, the thinness of the device, the fact that it's waterproof. Those are all features that my guess is that we could imagine at that time, but took years to get them to the point where you see them in that, the Kindle Oasis that's available now.
Yeah. The other thing I've noticed just in the years of covering it is the accumulation of small advances, for example, in the way you highlight on a Kindle, and it just gets easier and easier to fetch those highlights in a useful way and print them out. That kind of goes on behind the surface each year, but the result has been something that really stands out in my view.
I agree. I think another example for me as a customer is X-Ray. Which took a while for us to be able to have it be a compelling customer experience. But I read a lot of nonfiction, and I love the X-Ray feature.
I was talking with a mystery writer in Harry Bingham in the UK who's publishing his own work. He didn't know about X-Ray or if he could simply add X-Ray to his self-published book using KDP. And I've kind of wondered the same thing as to why do some books have it, some not? Is it something Amazon chooses to do to certain books, or can an author right from the start say, I want to make sure that my book has X-Ray?
It's a good question. I'm not involved in running the business day to day anymore, so I can't answer that specifically, but I'm sure we could follow up and get them the answer.
Yeah, okay. The staffer who helped set up the interview did get back to me with information about how authors can set up X-Ray on their own books. I forwarded that to Harry Bingham, who was very interested in it, and I'll also have a link to it in the show notes. Just look under the interview part of the show notes, and you'll find that link. One thing that, when I think back over the 10 years, I thought that by now, if I'd had to guess, maybe half the people in the U.S. would be reading on Kindles or possibly other e-reader devices, and half would be reading print. And I think it's probably more like a third on Kindle. It varies with the genre. Very difficult to have foreseen how quickly this would be adopted. But have you been disappointed or surprised, or what's your view of the rate of adoption over this period?
I don't know what that adoption percentage is. We're humbled here, though, by when you hear the personal stories that people share with you, and I still have people that come up and share those stories with me all the time. And often they're about how they have a relative who, in many ways, it gave them back the ability to read. So someone who couldn't read a physical book anymore because the font size just couldn't get large enough, or they were located somewhere where it was, difficult to get the books, or even people where the weight of the physical book was just too difficult for them to hold anymore. So for me, those stories are always energizing and always motivating.
Yeah, I've heard those as well. The product demo that I attended in New York for the new Oasis, there were a couple of great guys that walked me through it. One of them was Mike Torres, Kindle Director of Product Management Design. When he talked about the team's mission, the words he used were to inspire the world to read more and to get more out of reading every day. And in the past, I've heard Jeff and others state the Kindle mission is making every book ever printed in any language available anywhere in the world in less than 60 seconds. Has the mission changed, or is this just sort of two ways of saying the same thing when you think about the mission of the Kindle?
I think it's likely two ways of saying the same thing. Again, I'm not leading the business anymore, but what I'm guessing from what you just said that Mike might have been referring to the Kindle app when he was talking about maybe making reading accessible to anyone using the Kindle app, which is, as you know, a fantastic partner to the physical devices. Right,
exactly. I bet that's what it was. Jeff has said in the past that we co-evolve with our tools, our tools change us, and the Kindle is purpose-built for long-form reading. I think he had the aspiration or perhaps the hope that it might actually help to lead us toward longer spans of attention, a counterbalance to technologies that make information snacking easier. Do you think that the Kindle, especially the e-ink Kindle that is purpose-built, has in any way stemmed the rush toward information snacking?
What I do know is that customers comment all the time that they love that it was and still is purpose-built for reading. You know, they talk about how enjoyable it is to still be able to get lost in the author's words without the distractions of getting emails coming in or texts coming in or being able to flip over to watch some video to do other things, and that the device, what gets added to it are reading-centric features like the ones we've talked about, X-ray, or for my wife, she likes to read in French, and so being able to do French to English dictionary lookups is super compelling for her. And so I think it remains one of the really important decisions is to keep it, as you say, purpose-built. You know, we talked a lot in those early days about decisions of the things for it to not do were as important as the decisions of what it should do.
Right. Kindle Direct Publishing started out right with the launch of the Kindle, and of course it's been a fabulous success. I saw that Macmillan was closing its self-publishing business Pronoun next year. Can you say whether Kindle Direct Publishing is profitable for Amazon?
Yeah, as you know, we don't break out the individual economics of our businesses, but I can tell you that from the beginning, Kindle Direct Publishing, as you said, it's been fantastic for both authors and for readers. Authors using it can just directly connect with millions of readers around the world, and there are hundreds of thousands, I think, authors today, the last time I heard a statistic, who use Kindle Direct Publishing to tell their stories. And it's great for readers because, lots of readers have been able to discover new authors that they had never heard of.
Yeah. I've been so irritated at the pricing of ebooks by the big five publishers in the past several years. But one advantage I think it might have caused is that self-published authors, independent authors, they have a little more room to price their books in a way that's really compelling to customers. Do you see any link between the pricing decisions of the big five and how robust the whole KDP environment has been?
The learning that we took when we were building Kindle Direct Publishing is what we've learned at Amazon is that when you build a self-service platform and get out of the way, great things often happen. And that was really the simple approach we took with Kindle Direct Publishing because we had seen that approach work elsewhere in Amazon. And so that self-service nature, allowed people to experiment. And in this case, entrepreneurial authors found a way to make it really successful. At the end of the day, they retain their rights. They can get to market really quickly with a book. As you probably know, they earn royalties up to 70%. And so I think there are, lots of benefits for the authors in using that publishing platform.
Well, and I think the service that I helped my dad publish a book. Questions that come up, you've got the 24/7 service. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes aspects of people that are using that I think contributes to the success.
Yeah, and as I said, we've it's a lesson we've in a good way learned many times in Amazon, which is there are lots of entrepreneurs out there in many different industries. Authors are one great example. And if you give them the tools and you give them access to customers, good things can result from that.
Yeah. There's an interesting aspect to your Amazon story because 8 years after the launch of the Kindle in 2015, you took a sabbatical and interesting juncture in your professional life, I'm sure, after that intensive period with a company that was growing that fast. Can you say what you learned in your time away from Amazon and how that's informed what you've been doing since?
We went and lived in the south of France for a year, so I can tell you that I learned that I loved French food. So I'm not sure how helpful that is in what I'm doing. But it was a great year with my family. We had talked about wanting to do it a lot, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to to find a way to do it. We, as a family, we spent a lot of time together. We got to stretch ourselves by living in a new environment. We got to travel a lot. I think it gave all of us a global perspective. And, we also formed lifelong friends that we get to stay in touch with today. And for me, I also learned that, as I knew, I love working and I love Amazon. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I love to build and I love to create. And so my time away was fantastic, but I was also incredibly excited about coming back and building again.
Yeah. And what can you say what your current areas of responsibilities are at Amazon?
Sure. Today I'm working on our physical store businesses. Amazon Books, Amazon Go, Whole Foods. I'm also recently leading our Amazon Fresh and Prime Now businesses.
Do you have a personal preference for the location of HQ2?
Well, I can tell you that my parents are rooting for Naples, Florida, where they live.
I see.
But other than that, I don't think I have anything to share about it.
I think Sarah said that. Do you have some connections with the Boston area at some point in your career?
I am from Boston, and anybody who comes to my office will know that. I have lots of Boston memorabilia up in my office, but that's just about me in my office.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm calling you from Cambridge here, and the area is pretty. I went to my Harvard Business School 40th reunion a couple of weekends ago, and the dean was practically drooling. He was so excited about the possibility of there's a Harvard research park that has been pitched as a possible Boston site. So you've generated a lot of anticipation in a lot of cities around the country, I think.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see together how it all plays out.
Exactly. How are you reading books yourself these days? Which of the devices, paper and all the Amazon devices, when you pick up a novel or something, how are you generally reading it?
I read mostly on my Kindle. I love, I'm traveling a fair amount these days. I love having multiple books with me. I love having the light over the screen for reading at night. And as I mentioned, I'm a huge user of X-Ray. I read a fair amount of nonfiction, and that feature for me just makes it's a really powerful feature.
Any books that you've been reading on those long plane rides you'd like to recommend to my listeners?
Let's see. I am currently reading a book called Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Start of the FBI.
Yeah, in the Osage Indian tribe in the 1920s, they had discovered oil on their land that they had been pushed to, and then a series of murders started to take place. Just at the beginning of it, but it's definitely grabbed me from the beginning. Let's see, I think this is probably the time of the year where the Amazon Editor's Best Picks come out.
Yep.
Best Picks of the Year, I always like to look through those. I think they have good recommendations, so I'm sure that's something I'll be looking at. They
also put out a list of I think it was the 10 top-selling Kindle books of the whole decade, which is an interesting list. A lot of Hunger Games books, and not Harry Potter, I noticed. It was an interesting list to put out.
Huh, that is interesting.
Good. Well, anything else you'd like to mention that we didn't bring up at this point?
I don't think so. I enjoyed reminiscing with you. It's always we don't look backwards often, and so it's always fun to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I've been speaking with Steve Kessel, Senior Vice President of Amazon. Thanks very much, Steve.
Thank you.
In content, I'll have a link to an interesting list that Amazon compiled with the 10-year anniversary of the Kindle in mind, and it's the top-selling books for each of the past 10 years, from thrillers to a timeless classic. So going back in time, 2017, it's Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. For 2015 and 16, both years, it was The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. 2014, The Fault in Our Stars, John Green, great book. Dan Brown, The Inferno in 2013. 2012, we get into the 50 Shades of Grey years for 2012 and but 2011 was The Help by Catherine Stockett. 2010, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. 2009, The Lost Symbol, and 2008, The Complete User's Guide to the Amazing Amazon Kindle. I think that's the Stephen Windwalker book. That's great. Good to see him emerging on this list. And then 2007, The Pillars of the Earth Can Fall It. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. Those are the best-selling Kindle books for each of those years. My guest next week will be Gabriella Page Fort, editorial director of Amazon Crossing. That's the translations imprint of Amazon Publishing. In 7 years, she has led Amazon Crossing to become the biggest producer of translated literature in the U.S. market. This is Len Edgerly for the Kindle Chronicles from Cambridge. I really appreciate your taking the time to listen to my show. Have a great day. Bye.